I stood in front of the full-length mirror, smoothing the satin folds of my wedding dress, feeling my heart flutter like a trapped bird in my chest. Everything felt like it had finally fallen into place. The dress, the vows, the storybook love I had spent years believing in. I smiled at my reflection, wanting to freeze this moment, to hold on to the certainty glowing inside me. The sunset poured through the hotel windows, wrapping me in a warm golden light. Tomorrow was supposed to be the start of forever. I didn't know it would actually mark the end of the perfect lie. At the rehearsal dinner, the air crackled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, but something about it made my skin prickle. I spotted Marina, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, standing in a quiet corner with a woman I didn't recognize, a woman whose smile was stretched tight, like it had been forced into place. Marina had always been civil. Polite enough for appearances, but never warm. Her smiles never quite touched her eyes. Still, I shook off the uneasy feeling. It was probably just wedding nerves, right? I told myself not to ruin the night over nothing. Later, while posing for a few last-minute pictures, I caught glimpses of Marina and that same woman, whispering behind a column, throwing quick glances my way. My stomach tightened, but I plastered on a smile for the camera. Everyone kept telling me that little hiccups were normal before a wedding. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was reading too much into it. After all, tomorrow was supposed to be perfect. I'd waited so long, dreamed so hard. How could it not be? Back in my hotel room, I was kicking off my heels when a knock came at the door. It was a staff member, dropping off a small gift basket. Just as he turned to leave, he said it, so casually it almost slipped past me. "Oh, by the way, the ex was asking if the payment was complete." I froze. My heart stopped, then slammed back into motion, thudding painfully against my ribs. Payment? Ex? I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment everything shifted under my feet. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the closed door, my mind racing in 100 different directions. Payment. Ex. Those words tangled together, tightening around my chest like a vice. I wanted to believe it was some kind of misunderstanding, maybe even a cruel coincidence. But deep down, something darker started to take root. I thought about Marina, about that tight-lipped woman, about the way they had kept glancing at me all evening. Suddenly, the whole night felt different. It wasn't wedding jitters. It was a warning I hadn't wanted to hear. Sleep was out of the question. I paced the room, trying to calm myself down, replaying every conversation from the past few days, every odd glance, every half-smile that suddenly didn't seem so harmless. I felt foolish for not noticing sooner, for trusting so blindly. My reflection caught in the window, hair pinned up, veil laid carefully across the chair, and for the first time I didn't see a glowing bride. I saw a woman on the verge of being blindsided. A woman standing at the edge of a cliff, pretending she couldn't feel the ground starting to crumble. I thought about calling him, my fiancé, the man I was supposed to trust with my whole life. But my fingers hovered over my phone and refused to move. What if it was nothing? What if it was everything? I couldn't breathe through the uncertainty. I needed answers, not promises, not right now. So I slipped on a sweater, grabbed my key card, and stepped quietly into the hallway, my bare feet silent against the thick carpet. The hotel was dark, mostly asleep. Only I was awake, chasing the first crack in the fairy tale I'd been living in. I headed down to the front desk, trying to keep my steps steady even though my mind was racing. The night clerk looked up with a polite smile, and I tried to match it, tried to act casual. "Hey," I said, voice light. "We had a guest ask earlier about a payment for an ex. Any chance you know what that was about?" He hesitated just long enough to confirm that yes, there was something worth digging into. His glance toward the security office was subtle, but I caught it. That's when I knew. I wasn't imagining things, and I wasn't leaving until I found out exactly what was happening. The night clerk fidgeted before finally leaning in, dropping his voice to a whisper. "There was a woman asking earlier about a balance being paid by a guest from the ballroom event. She mentioned a room number that matches yours." His words sliced through me sharper than any knife. I forced a smile, thanked him with a tip I barely remembered handing over, and backed away, heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead, I slipped into the shadows of the lobby, clinging to whatever calm I had left. If there was a scheme brewing, I needed proof. And fast. I circled the banquet hall one more time, careful to stay out of sight. From a darkened alcove near the service entrance, I spotted them, Marina and the woman from before, deep in conversation. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. Mentions of timing, mentions of a spectacle. And over it all, Marina's voice, so calm and calculating it made my skin crawl. We just need it to happen during the ceremony. The words crashed into me like a wave of cold water. My chest tightened, but I didn't move. If they thought I was going to crumble, they didn't know me at all. Back in my room, I locked the door and sank to the floor, knees pulled tightly to my chest. Every piece clicked into place, forming a picture I couldn't unsee. Marina wasn't just hoping for drama. She was planning a scandal, planting it like a bomb set to explode in front of everyone I loved. I thought about the dress hanging neatly in the closet, the vows waiting on crisp handwritten cards. All of it suddenly felt like props on a stage built for my humiliation. But here's the thing about me. I don't fold. I don't run. If Marina wanted a show, she'd get one, just not the one she was expecting. Somewhere between rage and heartbreak, a new kind of clarity settled over me. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding, at least not yet. There was too much at stake, too much to uncover before making any move. No, I would smile, walk the aisle, play the part, and gather every shred of evidence I could. If Marina thought she was orchestrating my downfall, she was about to realize she'd severely underestimated her opponent. And as I stared out at the city lights blinking in the distance, I made myself a silent vow. They would regret ever trying to bury me under their lies. The morning air felt heavy when I finally dragged myself out of bed, my body running on fumes and pure stubbornness. There wasn't a trace of the giddy bride I had been just hours before. Instead, I moved like someone preparing for battle, each step deliberate, my heart armored in suspicion. I grabbed a hoodie, tied my hair back, and slipped out into the quiet hallways of the hotel. If they were planning to humiliate me today, I needed to know every detail before the first guest even took their seat. Knowledge was the only weapon I had, and I was determined to use it. The front desk clerk from last night wasn't working anymore, but that didn't slow me down. I wandered toward the back offices, faking a lost expression until a younger employee offered to help. I leaned in, playing the flustered bride. Hey, so sorry. Crazy morning. Do you guys keep footage from the ballroom areas? I think I lost a bracelet during rehearsal and I'm hoping it turned up on camera. She hesitated, but pity and nerves won out. Moments later, I found myself tucked behind a counter, peering at grainy black and white footage. My stomach turned as I spotted them. Marina, the woman, and another man I didn't recognize, exchanging envelopes, glancing around like guilty thieves. My fingers gripped the edge of the desk so tightly my knuckles whitened. There it was, caught on tape, the conspiracy playing out right under the nose of my wedding day. 100 emotions surged through me: betrayal, fury, disbelief. Part of me wanted to storm upstairs, to blow it all up before they could even get started. But another part, the smarter, colder part, told me to wait. Let them think I was clueless. Let them get comfortable. The bigger the performance they staged, the harder it would be for them to deny it later. I tucked that grainy footage deep into my memory. It was one more card to play when the time came. I wasn't done yet. Something inside me, something raw and relentless, pushed me forward. I needed more than just suspicions and blurry images. I needed someone to say it out loud, and I knew exactly where to start. The woman from last night, the one Marina had been whispering with, wasn't staying far. I checked the guest registry when no one was looking, heart hammering as I found her room number. Room 418. I could practically feel the clock ticking louder in my ears. If I was going to stop this disaster before it exploded, I had to confront the truth face to face. I had to move. Now. I stood outside room 418 for a long moment, hand hovering just inches from the door. My mind raced with possibilities. What if she slammed it in my face? What if she lied? Worse, What if she confirmed every nightmare thought clawing at the back of my mind? I inhaled sharply, steeling myself, and knocked. When the door cracked open, there she was, the woman from the rehearsal dinner, still wearing the same tight smile, but now it wavered just slightly. She wasn't expecting me. Good. I intended to use every ounce of that surprise. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice low but steady. For a split second, she hesitated, weighing her options. Then she stepped aside, letting me in. The room smelled of stale perfume and anxiety. I didn't waste time. "I know about the arrangement," I said, watching her carefully. Her eyes widened before she quickly masked it, but it was too late. I had seen the crack in her armor. "I just want to know how much," I pressed. "How much did she pay you to destroy my wedding?" The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but I forced myself to stay calm, to stay in control. For a while, she said nothing, wringing her hands so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Finally, she sank onto the edge of the bed like her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you," she mumbled. "It was just supposed to scare you. Make you leave. She said you weren't the right kind of woman for her son." Every syllable drove deeper into me, but I stayed frozen in place, forcing my expression to remain unreadable. She was cracking, and I wasn't about to let her off the hook before I had everything I needed. I needed the whole story. I coaxed her gently, the way you might coax a frightened animal out of a corner. Slowly, painfully, it spilled out. Marina had paid her a hefty sum to appear at the ceremony, sobbing and waving fake screenshots of conversations between her and my fiancé. The goal was simple: humiliate me publicly, cast doubt on his loyalty, and make me walk away in disgrace. My stomach turned as I listened, feeling a toxic cocktail of rage and heartbreak bubble inside me. But underneath it all, a sharper feeling was growing, a sense of purpose, a cold clarity. They wanted a scandal? They were about to get something so much bigger. I pulled out my phone as casually as I could, pretending to check a text. In reality, I hit record. Her voice, shaky but unmistakable, spilled every ugly detail. How Marina had contacted her, how she had agreed to fabricate messages, how the timing was set to ruin me just as I said, "I do." It was all there, raw, undeniable. I fought to keep my hands from trembling as I tucked the phone back into my pocket. It wasn't just my word against theirs anymore. Now I had the truth, and when the time came, I would wield it like a weapon. By the time I left room 418, I was a different person than the one who had knocked on that door. Whatever naive hope I'd been clinging to had been shattered. The fairy tale was over, and in its place, something fiercer had taken root. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel sad anymore. Instead, I walked down the hallway with a calmness that almost scared me. Marina wanted to destroy me quietly, neatly, with whispers and deceit. But I wasn't about to let her get away with it. If they wanted a scene, I was going to give them one they'd never forget. Back in my room, I collapsed into the armchair, running through every possible move like a chess player seeing the whole board for the first time. I couldn't just expose them and walk away. That would be too easy. No, they needed to feel it. Marina needed to lose the one thing she was fighting so hard to protect: control. And as much as my heart ached, I needed to know exactly where my fiancé stood in all of this. Was he truly innocent, or was I about to marry a man who had been playing me all along? I had to be sure before I made my next move. With the recording safely saved and a storm brewing inside me, I made myself a silent promise. The ceremony would go on. I would walk down that aisle just like they planned. Only now I wasn't walking toward a future someone else had scripted for me. I was walking straight into the fire they had set, and I was going to make sure they were the ones who got burned. And so, while the city outside blinked lazily under the morning sun, I began planning the most important day of my life. But not in the way anyone expected. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed, my legs pulled up tight to my chest, staring at the list I had scrawled on the hotel notepad. It was messy, a stream of frantic thoughts. Ex-girlfriend, fake messages, Marina's involvement, proof recorded. Every word fueled a fire inside me, but I knew better than to act on rage alone. I had one shot to do this right. So I made the hardest decision yet. I wouldn't tell him. Not yet. I needed to see, truly see, if he was the man I believed he was, or if the lies ran deeper than I dared admit. Instead of confrontation, I chose precision. I texted my maid of honor, Cassie, a simple message. Need your help. It's serious. No questions yet. Within minutes, she was at my door, still in her pajamas, eyes wide with alarm. I pulled her inside, locked the door, and poured everything out in a whisper. Her face morphed from shock to fury to a steely kind of loyalty I hadn't realized I would need so badly. Without hesitation, Cassie nodded. We'll outplay them, she said. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. In that quiet, desperate room, a plan started to take shape. Cassie's cousin, Nate, happened to be a tech genius, the kind of guy who could pull security footage, fake itinerary lists, even rearrange scheduled events without anyone noticing. Cassie called him, and within the hour, we had a skeleton of a new wedding day, one that looked the same on the surface, but beneath every second was calculated. If they wanted chaos, we would control when and where it happened. We would take their weapon and turn it against them. As we mapped out the changes, I realized I wasn't trembling anymore. I wasn't scared. I was ready. But one thing still gnawed at me, refusing to let me rest. Marina's power didn't just come from lies. It came from money, from leverage, from whispered threats dressed up as polite suggestions. I needed insurance, something bigger than a video clip or a few angry witnesses, something binding. That's when the idea hit me with the force of a lightning strike, the prenup. Quietly, surgically, I could update it before the ceremony. If trust ever broke, if betrayal ever surfaced again, I would be the one holding the pen that rewrote the ending. And with that thought, the real battle plan began to form. By noon, Cassie and I had turned my hotel room into mission control. Papers were spread out across the bed, my laptop humming with tabs open to legal documents and wedding schedules. I called my family lawyer under the pretense of a last-minute adjustment to my personal contracts, and he didn't even flinch. Money has a way of smoothing questions. We agreed to meet in a small conference room at the hotel, away from curious eyes. Every step I took felt sharper, more calculated, like I was stepping into a version of myself I hadn't met before, a version that wasn't willing to be anyone's pawn. I stared at the updated prenup document, heart hammering against my ribs. It wasn't just about protecting money or assets. It was about power, about making it impossible for Marina, or anyone else, to ever use leverage against me again. The new terms were airtight. If betrayal ever occurred, I would walk away with everything I had built, untouched by family politics or generational wealth games. I initialed each page, the pen pressing harder with every signature. When it was done, when the notary sealed it, I felt something inside me shift. Like armor sliding into place over old wounds. After the paperwork, I turned my focus back to the wedding. Nate had already tweaked the itinerary, changing key moments without alerting the larger team. It was almost funny how easily the facade could be maintained with just a few clicks. The ceremony would start on time. The music would play. Guests would smile and drink champagne, oblivious to the trap slowly tightening around Marina's carefully orchestrated chaos. I knew there was still risk. I knew emotions would run high. But for the first time since the nightmare had started, I didn't feel cornered. I felt in control. By early evening, the hotel buzzed with pre-wedding excitement. Flowers were arriving, catering was setting up, laughter floated down the halls. It all looked so normal from the outside. I moved among the guests with practiced ease, smiling, nodding, thanking people for being there. But inside, I was a live wire, humming with anticipation. I kept catching Marina watching me from across the room, her smile tight, her posture stiff. She thought she had won. She thought she was about to watch me crumble in front of everyone. Little did she know, I wasn't walking into her trap. I was leading her straight into mine. Later that night, after the rehearsal festivities died down, I found myself alone on the hotel balcony, barefoot, sipping a glass of water that tasted like nothing. The city stretched out beneath me, glittering and oblivious. I thought about everything that had led me here, the late-night talks with my fiancé, The way I used to dream about this wedding when I couldn't sleep. Somewhere along the line, I had believed love alone would shield me. I was wrong. Love wasn't a shield. It was a risk. And trust? Trust wasn't a guarantee. It was a bet you placed with your whole heart on the line. I pulled my phone from my pocket and scrolled through the screenshots I'd saved. The bank transfers from Marina to the ex-girlfriend, the recording of her confession, the blurry security footage from the banquet hall. Proof stacked upon proof. It should have made me feel better, safer. But instead, it made me ache. Because no matter how strong the case, no matter how sharp the revenge, a part of me still grieved the fairy tale I was losing. The version of my life where everything was simple and good and untouched by ugliness. I wasn't just fighting for dignity anymore. I was mourning the innocence I had to leave behind. The plan for tomorrow was set, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was shifting inside me. This wasn't just about exposing a lie. It was about reclaiming something that had been quietly taken from me for years. My voice, my boundaries. My right to walk into a room and not question whether love came with invisible strings. As I leaned against the cold balcony railing, feeling the night air against my skin, I made a promise to myself. No matter what happened tomorrow, I would no longer apologize for protecting myself. Not with Marina, not with anyone. Down below, I watched a delivery truck pull into the hotel's service entrance, headlights cutting through the dark like blades. It struck me then how much could happen in the hidden spaces, the service doors, the unguarded whispers, the quiet deals made behind closed doors. That was where betrayals were born, but it was also where battles could be won. And tomorrow, when I walked down that aisle, it wouldn't just be about saying I do. It would be about taking back the narrative they thought they could control. It was about setting the stage for a moment none of them would ever see coming. The morning of the wedding broke in soft shades of gold and pink, like the universe was mocking me with its sweetness. I sat in the makeup chair, letting the stylist chatter about how stunning everything looked, nodding when appropriate, smiling when necessary. Inside, though, I was still, focused. Every brushstroke, every pin tucked into my hair was another layer of armor. The dress zipped up my back with a satisfying finality, and for a fleeting second, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look like a woman about to walk into a disaster. I looked like a woman about to win a war. Guests filled the outdoor garden, weaving between rose arches and crystal-laden tables, buzzing with excitement. I floated among them, my arm hooked through my father's, feeling their eyes, their whispers, their smiles. It all felt so normal, so achingly beautiful, that for a moment, even I wanted to believe in the fantasy. But I wasn't here to play pretend anymore. I caught sight of Marina near the front, her expression tight, her posture perfect. She wore a designer dress and the kind of confidence that comes from believing you're 2 moves ahead. I smiled to myself. She had no idea her checkmate was already unfolding. The music swelled, the soft strains of a string quartet filling the air. I stepped forward, each step measured, each breath deliberate. My fiancé waited at the altar, looking as nervous and earnest as any groom should. For a fleeting heartbeat, pain twisted inside me. I didn't know yet if he was a casualty or a conspirator, but either way, the truth would have its moment. Halfway down the aisle, I caught a flicker of movement at the edge of the crowd. The ex-girlfriend, just as Marina had orchestrated. Tears glistening, phone in hand, fake messages ready to detonate, right on schedule. She stumbled into the aisle, voice trembling, holding up her phone for everyone to see. "I can't do this," she sobbed. Fake texts displayed like weapons. Gasps rippled through the guests. People turned in their seats, craning to get a better view of the unfolding disaster. Marina's hand flew to her mouth, a perfect picture of staged horror. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was all spontaneous, tragic. But I knew better. I knew every beat of this play because they had written it for me. What they hadn't counted on was that I had rewritten the ending. I stopped halfway down the aisle, feeling every eye lock onto me, the world narrowing into a sharp, breathless silence. For a moment, I simply stood there, letting the weight of the moment settle. Then, without a word, I reached for the microphone the officiant had tucked discreetly by the altar. His eyebrows lifted in confusion, but he handed it over without protest. The ex was still sobbing theatrically, waving her phone like a flag of surrender. Marina clutched her pearls for extra effect. It was almost laughable, if it hadn't been so ugly. My hands were steady as I turned to face the crowd. I cleared my throat, letting the microphone squeal slightly for effect. "Before we continue," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the stunned silence, "there's something everyone needs to hear." A murmur rippled through the garden. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Marina's mouth parting slightly, her mask of control slipping for the first time. I pulled my phone from the folds of my dress, unlocked it with a swipe, and pressed play. The recording crackled to life, filling the garden with the ex-girlfriend's voice. Clear, unmistakable, damning. Every lie, every transaction, every ugly little secret laid bare. Gasps burst from the guests like popping bubbles. Chairs scraped against stone as people shifted uncomfortably, turning toward Marina, who stood frozen, color draining from her face. The ex, poor thing, tried to bolt, but Cassie, bless her, stepped forward and gently blocked her path. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about the woman who thought she could pull puppet strings without ever getting caught. I stepped closer to the altar, each footfall steady and deliberate. I wasn't a broken bride. I wasn't a victim. I was something far more dangerous now, a woman with the truth on her side. My gaze locked on Marina, unflinching, unapologetic. "When you try to destroy someone's life," I said into the mic, voice calm and razor sharp, "you should at least be smart enough not to leave a paper trail." Gasps turned to stunned silence. Marina's hands fluttered at her sides like she was searching for something to hold on to. But there was nothing left. Her empire of whispered lies was crumbling right there in front of everyone she had hoped would witness my downfall. And the best part? I hadn't even played my final move yet. I handed the microphone back to the officiant, my hands cool and steady, while the crowd sat frozen, hanging between shock and fascination. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one even breathed. Then I turned to my fiancé. His face was a storm of disbelief, horror, and something that almost broke me: devastation. He stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly at his sides, but I held up a hand to stop him. This wasn't his moment yet. First, the truth had to finish unfurling, raw and merciless, before any apologies or explanations could even be considered. The officiant, bless him, cleared his throat awkwardly and tried to regain control, but the damage was done. The perfect, pristine wedding Marina had envisioned was in ruins. Her friends whispered furiously among themselves. Distant relatives stared like they were watching a train wreck they couldn't look away from. I caught Marina's husband, the usually stoic, detached man, shaking his head slowly, his mouth set in a tight, embarrassed line. Even the ex-girlfriend looked like she wanted to disappear into the stone path beneath her. Everything Marina had built on manipulation and appearances was crumbling faster than she could scramble to save it. Cassie slipped up beside me, squeezing my hand in silent solidarity. It gave me the final burst of strength I needed. I turned to the crowd once more, voice calm but firm. "Today was never about love for some people here," I said, my gaze flicking unmistakably toward Marina. "But it still is for me. Love deserves better than lies. It deserves better than blackmail and betrayal." I didn't need to scream or cry or plead. The truth had already spoken louder than anything I could say. I smiled, a real smile, for the first time all morning. And then, with all the dignity they tried so hard to strip from me, I stepped away from the altar. Behind me, Marina called my name, her voice sharp and desperate, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The battle was over. She had lost in front of everyone she once controlled with just a glance. The silence that followed me down the aisle wasn't heavy with shame. It was electric, charged with the stunned awe of people witnessing something they hadn't seen coming. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning. And as I pushed open the garden doors and felt the fresh air rush against my skin, I knew one thing for certain. I had never been more free in my entire life. I didn't get far before I heard footsteps pounding behind me. I turned just in time to see him, my fiancé, closing the distance between us, his face stricken, his tie askew, desperation written across every line of his body. "Sophia, please," he choked out, reaching for me like a drowning man. For a second, I didn't move. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to scream and ask why he hadn't seen it, why he had let this happen. But when I looked into his eyes, all I saw was confusion and heartbreak, not guilt. And that somehow hurt even more. He grabbed my hands, squeezing them so tightly it almost hurt. "I swear to you, I had no idea," he said, voice raw, breaking. "I would never have let this happen if I knew. I would have protected you." His words spilled out in frantic, stuttering bursts, like he could hold me together just by sheer force of will. I studied him, my heart warring against itself. Every instinct in me wanted to run, to tear away from this entire mess. But there was something devastatingly honest about the way he looked at me. Like he wasn't just sorry. Like he was shattered. Behind him, the guests had scattered, some pretending not to stare, others whispering behind champagne glasses. Marina was nowhere to be seen. She had melted away, consumed by the wreckage of her own making. Part of me wanted to walk away from all of it, to drive off into the sunset and never look back. But a stronger part, the same part that had kept me standing when everything crumbled, wanted something else. Not revenge, not triumph. Something quieter, more dangerous. Control over my own future, with no strings left for anyone to pull. I took a deep breath and stepped back from him slightly, feeling the cool air rush between us. "I believe you," I said softly. His shoulders sagged with relief, but I held up a hand before he could say anything more. "But believing you doesn't mean we move forward like nothing happened. We rebuild this on our terms. No more lies, no more pretending, no more family politics." His face tightened in something like hope, maybe even gratitude. And in that moment, standing there in the aftermath of everything they had tried to destroy, I realized we weren't ending. We were starting over, on scorched but honest ground. We found a quiet spot near the back of the hotel gardens, away from the curious stares and clinking glasses. The sounds of the shattered wedding faded into the background, replaced by the low hum of evening insects and the rustle of wind through the trees. He sat beside me on a stone bench, his hands clasped tightly like he didn't know what to do with them. For a long moment, we just breathed. No accusations, no demands. Just two people sitting in the wreckage of a future that had almost been stolen. It was strangely peaceful, strangely honest, and exactly what we needed. "I'm sorry," he said again, softer this time, like he knew no apology would ever be big enough to erase what had happened. "For not seeing it, for not protecting you from her." I nodded, appreciating the simplicity of it. No excuses, no deflections, just the truth, raw and imperfect. Maybe real love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect fairy tales. Maybe it was about standing in the ashes together, not pretending the fire hadn't happened, but choosing to stay anyway. Choosing to rebuild with your own hands, not with the fragile pieces someone else gave you. I pulled the updated prenup papers from my clutch, placing them gently between us. His eyes widened slightly when he saw them, but he didn't flinch. He didn't even reach for them. Instead, he looked at me, really looked at me, with something fierce and unshakable. "Whatever you need," he said quietly. "Whatever it takes to prove I'm on your side." In that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about punishing him. This was about protecting the version of myself I had fought so hard to reclaim. And if he truly loved me, he would understand that without needing it explained. He nodded once, slowly, and finally picked up the papers. "Let's do this your way," he said. And it wasn't just words. I saw it in his face, heard it in the steady tremble of his voice. He was ready to fight with me, not against me. A new kind of hope stirred in my chest, not naive, not blind. A cautious, steady hope rooted in survival and hard choices. And as the stars began to blink awake in the deepening sky above us, I realized we had something far rarer than a perfect love story. We had the messy, bruised beginning of something real. The next morning, Marina's lawyer received a formal notice: a lawsuit for defamation, emotional distress, and intentional sabotage. It wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration that I wasn't the kind of woman you could target and expect to slink away untouched. I didn't need to yell or seek revenge in the way she would have. The truth had already done its damage. She lost more than just her reputation that day. She lost her power over her son, over me, over the entire fragile world she thought she controlled with whispers and carefully placed threats. As for the ex, she was escorted out that evening, clutching her phone like a life raft no one cared about anymore. Her tears didn't move anyone now. Her lies had been exposed under a scorching, merciless light. I watched her go without a word. I didn't need a victory parade or a final jab. Some endings didn't require fireworks. Sometimes the greatest revenge was letting people collapse under the weight of their own choices, while you walked away lighter, stronger, untouched by the poison they tried to pour into your life. We didn't rush back into wedding plans, not out of fear, but because we wanted to do it differently, on our terms, without the toxic shadows clinging to the edges of our vows. We spent months rebuilding, slow dinners, long talks, raw honesty. It wasn't easy. Trust isn't something you just decide to have again. It's something you slowly grow back, like scar tissue. Stronger than before, but not the same. And honestly, I didn't want it to be the same. I didn't want the fragile dream I once had. I wanted something brutal and beautiful and real. And this time, that's exactly what we were creating. Looking back, part of me is almost grateful for how it all fell apart. I was supposed to be humiliated, broken, discarded like an unwanted story. Instead, I became something else, something no one saw coming. I didn't leave that garden as a weeping bride or a scandalized fool. I left as a woman who had faced betrayal, stared it down without flinching, and chosen herself above all else. And if there's one thing Marina and everyone like her learned that day, it's this: you can try to break a woman like me. You might even get close. But you will never, ever see her fall the way you planned.